And now to another report cataloguing the failures in our education system. And it isn't a lack of money that's the problem. It's how we train teachers and what those teachers teach and how they teach. That's the focus of this new damning report from the Australian Education Research Organisation. The organisation warns in their report that the new curriculum does not provide sufficient guidance to teachers, many of whom they say are now being required to invent their own syllabus resources. It also found that compared to 7 comparable countries, Australia has half the content of other education systems and omits or includes only a low level of some essential topics and teaches other content years later than kids get it in other school jurisdictions. Joining me now to discuss this, Senior Fellow at the Australian Catholic University, Dr Kevin Donnelly. Well, Kevin, you've made a lifetime of studying national curricula, making sure not just that teachers know how to teach, but that what we're teaching kids is relevant, ahead of the world, OECD level. We've got some real issues here with the curriculum. Science in particular is a top concern. Take us through what the report finds today.
Thank you, Peter, and you're correct. It's a very good report today, and I congratulated those people responsible. But we've known about this issue for over 25 years. There have been various benchmarking reports I've been involved in that really tell us that Australia, if you like, the rot set in all those years ago. So when you look internationally, those countries that outperform us in the international testing, they adopt a more academically rigorous curriculum. They don't try and do as much as we do, so our curriculum is overcrowded. They focus overseas, places like, if you think of the usual suspects, Japan, Singapore, South Korea, Hong Kong, but also if you look at Quebec in Canada and even New Zealand now and England, who are outperforming us, they focus on the essential knowledge, understanding and skills. It's not superficial. Whereas the Australian curriculum is overcrowded, and that makes it almost impossible to teach. Teachers really have their hands tied here because the curriculum promotes a checklist mentality and they don't have the time. They're trying to cover too much. They can't focus on what's essential.
Yeah, and what they're covering is stuff of no great value. It's not the building block basics that kids need to learn. And interesting, the report says, this is in relation to science, that in the first 9 years of a child's education in Australia, we only cover 44 science-related topics, international topics, but overseas they cover an average of 74. So basically double what we do. Now, you're right to say the curriculum's crowded, but it must be crowded with crap because all the stuff we should be teaching, we're not.
You're right about that. And as you know, I reviewed the national curriculum in 2016. And when you look at the way Australia's done it, we don't just, like a syllabus, list what the content is. We also have these cross-curricular priorities, sustainability, Indigenous, study of Asia. It's all very woke, all very politically correct. And we also have these so-called general competencies, working in teams, being creative. It's all very new age, all about 21st century learning. So the curriculum, it's contradictory in a way. We try and do too much with all the competencies and priorities and then the content. But in doing all of that, we're missing out on what's essential. What if you talk about particular disciplines like mathematics, like science, like English, music, whatever it might be, we're not teaching the essential content early enough. And the overseas countries, they tend to do more difficult work earlier, whereas we leave it till later and it's often too late.
Just quickly on Palestinian activism in schools, we saw obviously the predominantly Victorian kids, but it went around the country protesting last week in pro-Palestinian marches. We see today there's a flyer that's come out from the Australian Education Union, Victoria branch, no surprises there, wanting teachers all week to wear a traditional Palestinian headscarf or a pro-Palestinian badge or T-shirt activism all week in the classroom. What do you think, Kevin?
Well, again, it's not surprising. You might remember during the Howard years, the Australian Education Union came out and told students to strike because America and Australia had gone into Iraq after the Twin Towers were destroyed. The AEU, they're cultural left, cultural Marxist, if you like. They have a long history of promoting what I call indoctrination in schools for young, vulnerable students. So they scare students about climate change, the world's about to end. They tell boys that they're guilty of toxic masculinity. This whole push over the last week is simply the latest example. And it just proves to me in education that Dracula's in charge of the blood bank.
Kevin Donnelly, thank you for your time.